Hello, welcome to the ginger kraut demo. If you're on, say hi. I'll just wait for some people to come on. All right, I'm just gonna get started. So, welcome to the ginger kraut demo. I'm going to show you how to make basically a plain kraut, but I'm going to add some ginger to it just to spice it up a little bit, give it a little bit more flavor. Sauerkraut is one of my favorite ferments, and it's my favorite ferment because it's super versatile. It's a condiment I put on just about anything, kind of like salsa. I think of it like that. So I like to put it on my eggs in the morning. I mix it into salads to add flavor. At dinner time, I just like to take out a few jars of different flavored, or maybe a flavored kraut that might go good with dinner that night. Set it out on the table so it's just easy to remember to eat it, and just use it, eat it on the side of the plate. And you can flavor it with just about anything, surprisingly, even fruit. So some of my favorite flavors, the plain kraut is really good. It's nice and sour. If you add ginger to it, it adds a nice little spicy kick and that wonderful ginger flavor, which is also really good for your stomach. So if you ever have a upset stomach or anything, you can drink a little bit of the sauerkraut brine to make it feel better, especially if you have ginger in it. You could add turmeric to it to make a turmeric ginger kraut. It's a nice antioxidant, anti-inflammatory kraut. You can even add apples to it. So apples and ginger is a really great combination as well. The apples add a little bit of sweetness, which is really good, and it balances really well with the ginger too. You can add carrots and beets and ginger. You could make it spicy by adding spicy peppers to it, or even red bell peppers to make it mild and just taste like a salsa. A little bit of onion, cilantro. One of the recipes I posted to the challenge was a jalapeno cilantro kraut. One of my favorites because it tastes like salsa. I like to put that on my eggs or mix it up with avocado to make a guacamole. So kraut is super versatile. It's one of my favorites, like I said, and I think that once you make it, you'll love it too. So I'll get started. So here I have just a pretty a green cabbage right here. It weighs about 2 pounds. Your typical cabbage weighs around 2 pounds, and green cabbage. So you can use green cabbage or purple cabbage, or a combination of the two. Purple cabbage makes a really beautiful color, a really pretty like magenta color, so it's nice and fun to use too. If you do use purple cabbage, they tend to be drier than the green, so you might not get enough brine from it. So in that case, you might have to add a little bit of salt water to it, just as a tip. So the first thing I do when making sauerkraut is I just plainly rinsed it underwater. These stay really clean. And then we're just gonna peel off the outer layers. So I like to peel off 2 or 3 leaves. This one's kind of funny. All right, and set those aside. Not feeling very well. All right. There we go. All right, so I'm just peeling them and setting them aside. And then once I peel it, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use those cabbage leaves to help roll them up, and we're gonna help submerge the kraut under the brine. That's what we're gonna use those for, so that's where we're saving them. And next I'm just gonna cut it in half. And then inside the cabbage are cores. It's kind of hard to see. The cores of the cabbage, we're going to cut those out and set those aside as well. Those are going to help submerge, keep it weighted under the brine as well. So I cored the cabbage. They're really small cores. Set those aside, set the leaves aside. And now I'm going to shred the cabbage. So I use a food processor a lot of times because it's just super quick. And if I have other veggies to shred, like carrots or beets or anything else, I usually use the food processor. But you can obviously use a knife. What's nice about cutting it yourself is you can cut it as thin as you like or as thick as you like. So as you start making more sauerkraut, you'll figure out what you like. You know, if you like them, you know, in a larger, you know, cut them larger or thinner. I like it on the thin side, so that's how I'm going to shred them. So I just simply shred it. Not super exciting to watch, right? So there's going to be a lot of cabbage available in the stores here, probably now, really soon. So you should have no problem finding cabbage this time of year. Okay. All right. Did that without cutting my fingers. All right. So now I have all the shredded cabbage. I'm going to stick it in a big bowl. And it gets a little bit messy. Try to use as big as bowl as you have, because once we start stirring it up, it's gonna get everywhere. At least that's how I am. I'm a little bit messy. Okay. All right, so I have all the cabbage. I'm just kind of breaking it up with my hands, loosening it up. And now we're gonna add the salt. So I'm using a fine sea salt, which I used for the pickle brine as well last week. And I'm gonna use 1 tablespoon here, which is about 12 grams of salt. And I'm just gonna sprinkle it. And what we're gonna do is just squeeze and mix the cabbage until it feels like it's the salt is evenly distributed. It's a really important step. It's probably the most work you'll do. So just mixing it, squeezing it, and it just starts breaking down the walls of the cabbage as well, so that the brine, the liquid from the cabbage, will start to come out. And that brine that we make from squeezing the cabbage and from the salt, drawing it out, will be the brine. That will be the brine of that the sauerkraut will be submerged under. So I'm just gonna mix it a little bit more, and you don't have to do too much work here. And then what I do at this point is I just let it sit. All right, so once it's just kind of mixed in, and we just let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm gonna let the salt do the work. So instead of squeezing, massaging for 15 to 20 minutes, your hands are gonna get really tired. Just set it aside and come back to it. So at this point, just set it aside, and if there's anything else you're going to be adding to the sauerkraut, now you can prepare that. So if you're going to be adding apples, start chopping those up or shredding them, or carrots, start shredding those, onions, garlic, you'll do that now as you set the cabbage aside and let the salt work for you. So we're not going to wait. I have one already. I did 15 minutes before I started this video, so that one's all ready to add my ingredients to. So I'm going to set this one aside. And then I have this one. So this I made about 20 minutes ago. Did the same thing you just saw me do. And as you can see, just sitting there, how much it shrunk, like in size. And the cabbage heads were the same size, they were 2 pounds. Now if I mix it and I squeeze it, you can start to feel the juice come out. And I'm gonna just do this just a little more till it does come out. It's a good time if you have a cabbage pounder to use one of those. So if you had a cabbage pounder, this is one I have, you could start just kind of pounding it a little bit to break it down. Those work really nicely for that. All right. Otherwise, use your hands. So I think what I'm going to do now is go ahead and just put in the ginger. I have a tablespoon of ginger here that I grated, and I grated it with one of these planers, I guess, zesters. I left the skins on. It's organic, so I just left it on and grated it. So I have here a tablespoon of ginger. And if you have any other vegetables that you want to add to your sauerkraut, now's the time to do it. So we're just going to mix that in and squeeze it. And it smells amazing. Ginger is so good in sauerkraut. Just adds a little bit of warmth and spiciness, and it just really shines. Yeah, so you can mix it in pretty well, and I'm making a mess. And I can feel it. It's very wilted. It's starting. You see that? If you can see the juice coming out. So that's what we want. You just kind of. All of that is the brine. All right. Now what I'm going to do actually is taste it. So just to make sure you have enough salt. And I know salt is a big deal. Everyone's usually worried about salt, how much they put enough salt, not enough salt, too much salt. So if your cabbage head looks a little bit on the small side, I would have started with maybe a half a tablespoon of salt, tasted it, and seen if you need to add more. Mine was about a normal size, so about 1 tablespoon of salt. So I'm just going to taste it just to see if it needs any more. Oh, it's a little spicy. No, it's good. It's a little bit salty, which is what I want, but still palatable. So always taste it if you need more. If you're always worried about too much salt, you can add less and taste it later. So it should taste slightly salty, but still be palatable, meaning like you can almost eat it as a coleslaw right now. Is the amount of salt. Everything's going to be submerged under the brine in an anaerobic environment where there will be no air present. So it's going to be totally safe. So you can vary the amount of salt you use. I've even made kraut without salt by using celery juice. So you don't need a lot, okay? And then if you're adding more veggies, you're going to increase the volume of the vegetables that you have in here, and you might need to add a little bit more salt if you add a few carrots and you add some more apples, or you might not, or if your cabbage is small. So that's the salt taste test. You just taste it right now, see if you need to add more salt. It's perfect. I'm not going to add more. If it's too salty, if you accidentally put too much salt, you can add water to it at this point. You could add a little bit of filtered water and then taste it again. So you kind of just taste it at the bottom of the bowl a little bit, it's all wet, to see, just taste it for the salt content. So if it's too salty, add a little bit of water, taste it again, and then add a little bit of water if you need it. So it's not, if you added too much salt, it's savable. You can save it, okay? Don't worry about that. All right, so at this point, we're gonna add it to the jar. So again, just using the simple mason jar method. All right, so got the mason jar here. I'm just gonna start just stuffing it in. Okay, when it gets up to there, then I'm just gonna use my hand and press it down. Okay, and as you press it down, you'll see some of the brine come up. You want to pack it in really tightly because you want to get all the air out. We don't want any air in there. We want it to all fit in the jar as well. So this is when actually a cabbage pounder does come in handy because you can really push it down. I didn't use these for years, and now that I have one, I love it. But it's not necessary. You don't have to get it. All right. So now. Perfect amount. All right, just your hand, just push it down. Or just use the tamper. If you have a Vitamix or one of those high-speed blenders that came with a tamper, those little tampers, you could use that too. And we got some juice at the bottom. Just pour that in. Set aside. Okay. So we've got this beautiful brine in here. It perfectly covers the cabbage mixture here. I'm just gonna kind of stuff it down a little bit. And now, so it's about here to the shoulder, which is what we want. We want to leave some room because it's going to have a lot of activity and might bubble over as it's fermenting, which I've had happen dozens of times. So yeah, fill it up about to the shoulder. And then those cores that I saved a little while ago, what I like to do is just push them down into it. That. Gonna kind of roll up the cabbage leaves. They're a little bit broken, but it's okay. Roll them up and just kind of wedge them in. Push it down. And this works as an amazing weight. This is my favorite way to weigh down sauerkraut. And everything, it's hard to see. You can see that is just under the brine. The cabbage leaf isn't. So when we're done, we're going to throw away the cabbage leaf that's been exposed to air. But everything under the brine is totally fine. Yeah, as you can see, like that. And at this point, you can just put the jar on. You can do it just, I have trouble with these. Okay, jar on right here. You can leave it loose so gas can escape on its own. Or if you tighten it, because you don't like the smell of the sauerkraut as it's fermenting, and sometimes people smell it in their house and don't like it, you can close it tightly, but just remember to burp it every couple days. That means release the gas. Or what I like to do with sauerkraut is use an airlock. So I have here a Mason Tops, what's it called? They call it a pickle pipe. I've been using these for a long time. So that's going to allow the gas to escape without me having to remember to burp the jar. So that just goes right on there. So gas will escape and yeah, I won't have to burp the jar. Yeah, and that's it. It's sauerkraut. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to take any. Another important thing is to label the jar so you remember when you made it, what it is. Especially when you find it in the fridge later, which I do find. I find ferments in there back there all the time. So just some chalkboard labels I have. All right, let me know if you have any questions about making sauerkraut or anything really so far in the challenge. Kimchi is a whole different method. You can make sauerkraut like flavor and taste like kimchi like this and add those flavors. But kimchi is, this is called a dry salting method of fermenting, and kimchi is a little different. So what you do with that is it actually, the cabbage soaks, you use Napa cabbage, and that will soak in a saltwater brine overnight, and the cabbage absorbs that, and then you rinse it, and then you do the same kind of process I just did today. So it's slightly different. But you can make like kimchi flavored, like you can use the spices, the Korean spices, making sauerkraut this way too. Yeah, kimchi is one of my favorites, so good. Anyone have any other questions? Or pretty simple once you see it done. It's the same thing. What you're going to notice over the next few days also is the brine does already look a little bit cloudy just because of the color of it, but it'll get more cloudy. The cabbage will start to even get more duller. It gets more of a yellow color as it ferments, and you will notice air bubbles. So since we packed it in really tight, you will see little tiny air bubbles start to form inside the jar. So that's how you know it's fermenting. But I'll follow up with that too later next week. All right, if nobody else has any more questions, I'll be online for a little bit longer. You can leave a comment below. I'll be checking all night as well. I'll post this video also to the lessons and the challenge, so you can access it anytime and follow along if you want to follow along while you're making your sauerkraut. All right. Thanks you guys so much for joining me in my second Facebook Live. It's been a lot of fun just being in this challenge with you. I've been really inspired by what you're making, and I thank you for that. So have an awesome week, and make your sauerkraut, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, bye guys.